This conference will now be recorded.
Money laundering. Don't sit, Brett.
Okay, well, I'm happy to call this. I'd like to all stand and we'll read the pledge of allegiance, which is behind the post here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
the United States of America, and the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
For all.
I think tonight we have the pleasure of introducing Tom Broderick, who from Northwood School, who I think is going to give us a pretty good description of the steps that the school has taken to reintroduce its student body to the grounds at Northwood. And I think it's an important discussion for us to be aware of the steps that the school is taking and the precautions, because sooner or later, there's always an integration of the students at Northwood with the community and Main Street in particular. So, Tom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Randall. Thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity. When Craig and I had spoken recently, I offered to come explain what Northwood is doing, in large part because we recognize with over 240 faculty, administrators, staff, day students, boarding students from 25 countries and 19 states, 9 online students, and an additional 24 family members whose parents work at the school, that if we didn't do it right, it could have a detrimental impact on the community. In fact, when we started planning, which was March 15th, the day after we sent our students home, the number one priority when we brought our students back was to ensure that the community would be safe. Not just the Northwood community, but the village of Lake Placid and the town of North Belva. Because when you have students from all over the world and a global pandemic, we were worried that that would be the hardest thing to do. I wish I could express to you the size of the discarded paper that happened along the way. John Spear, the assistant head of school, said to our parents back in June that we need to be humble in a pandemic because the virus doesn't really care about your plans. And as June became July, and the number of states that were on our travel ban by our governor grew, we realized that we had to change things. So we call the plan Northwood Forward. You have the basic facts in front of you. And really the most important aspect of stage one was successfully onboarding the students. And what we mean by onboarding is bringing them from their communities to the Lake Placid community and ensuring that they did not bring the virus with them. And we just successfully finished that. I'm happy to report that we have given over 700 tests to our students, faculty, and day students, and we have not had one positive case. What we required our students to do and our faculty was 5 days before returning to campus, they had to take a test and get results, or they would not be allowed on campus. This includes day students who live here, and we all know that we are very fortunate that the virus is, given how busy our summer has been, does not seem to have taken a toehold in our community. We're grateful for that. I think the signs on Main Street, I saw it firsthand. Once the signs on Main Street went up, the increase in mask use went up along with it. So we required students to get a test 5 days before we're coming, and they were tested on campus. We partnered with the Broad Institute, which is a laboratory that was started at MIT and some scientists. Each student would have to take a test. It was a nasal swab, just in the front part of the nose, 3 in one nostril, 3 in the other. We packaged them up, and then we drove them to Boston. And we were guaranteed that we would get results back in 36 to 72 hours. In every case, we've gotten them back in 36 hours. And in every case, the students have been negative. In that onboarding process, the pre-arrival test, we had one student from Massachusetts test positive. She has recently reported back to campus because she has the antibodies and because she's had 3 negative tests since being diagnosed positive. We are certain that she is virus-free at this point in time. That was no small feat. It required our students, because of the number of students from foreign countries, number one, and students from states where the governor requested that they be quarantined for 14 days. We had to lock down our entire student body, our entire boarding population. In some cases, students who could not travel directly to the United States traveled indirectly to another country, quarantined for 14 days, and then traveled to the United States and did another 14-day quarantine. And that was the only way that
I realize nobody can hear them.
Mute everybody. They are.
She just said, I don't think they realize no one can hear. Can you hear us?
I'd speak louder. So our students got on campus. The first 7 days on campus was literally isolation. Our students were in the room 22 out of 24 hours. They had 2 hours where they were allowed outside of their room, where they could go out in the field with their cohort. So the basis of our system is, if you all are aware, the bubble is to create bubbles within the school community. We call them cohorts. They're based upon their athletic pursuits. So we have a soccer cohort, ice hockey boys, ice hockey girls. We have alpine skiers. And then our fifth cohort is our independents. Our independents are kids who are here for drama or dance or robotics, or perhaps they're here because of our learning center. We've organized our dormitories along those cohorts as well, so that a student living on a hall will be training and living with those kids that they'll be with the whole year. We did this because it's going to allow us protection if the virus were to come on campus. It creates an automatic firewall, and so we're pretty happy with that. So we tested the students 3 times once they were on campus, the day they arrived, a week later, and then the second week after, and all of those tests have been clean. So we're now entering the next phase, which is, ironically, our concern has shifted from students from outside bringing the virus in to students who live within the broader community and faculty who live in the broader community, and then bringing the virus on campus. We all have seen what happened in Elizabethtown at a nursing home.
Nobody can hear you.
Well, we've got dozens of people on there.
Don't speak any louder. We won't.
Why aren't they muted? They keep unmuting themselves. What should I ask if the public can hear us?
No. Keep going. I think you should just keep going. Yeah, it is what it is.
So we moved out of the early testing phase in the onboarding process to now what we call assurance testing. This testing is going to be random over the next several weeks. We're actually going to be in classes from this week until November 20th. At this point in time, our students are not allowed to go into the broader community. That is to ensure that we do not bring the virus onto campus, but we foresee over time that they will be going into the community, specifically for ice hockey, for skiing, for other events. At this point in time, we have no plans for our students to travel, but if they do travel, we have plans in place. We had to do a lot of work to get the building ready. We had to create a whole new infirmary. Our nurse's office last year was a tiny room of about 300 square feet. We now have a true health center and infirmary that can house 7 students who are ill overnight with bathroom facilities, so we can put them in isolation. We also have partnered with a local hotel. We have secured 11 rooms for the 11 weeks to November 20th. If we should need that place to onboard a student who presently is not on campus, or a student who has been asked to go home because they were sick and needs to return once they're healthy. Our plan is that any student that does get sick will be asked to leave. If they're international, they've had to partner with a group that will house them within 6 hours. So if any student becomes sick, they'll be out of the community within 24 hours to ensure that we don't spread it elsewhere. Families all understand this and they're on board with it. We are going to be doing a number of things from here on out. We have 5 phases. Right now, we're in our most open phase, which allows every student to be in class with each other cohort with a mask on. Should the virus come in within the community and be a concern, we can lock it down so that we're only doing classes with one cohort at a time, with the other four cohorts learning virtually. We invested a large amount of money in Teams, a Microsoft product, to make sure we can deliver this product to our students. And we are going to be vigilant to make sure that we keep the virus from entering the broader community or from the broader community to us. I have to say, there were skeptics. Some people predicted that 10% of our student body would show up with the virus, and we are fortunate that none have. We know that going forward, we're going to need to partner with the village and the town should the virus spread within the broader community. If there's any way that we can help, like we did earlier this year by hosting a testing site on our campus, which we've already told Adirondack Health we'd be happy to do again, or if there's any means that we can do to make sure that the community stays safe, we're happy to do it. That's basic plan. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take.
How about your ventilation system? You use M3 filters. What have you done there?
So the campus itself, the building, obviously is 100 years old. So the majority of the main building does not have any HVAC. We do have one auditorium that has air conditioning unit. We brought in Hyde Stone. Right now, we put in the best filters that we can, which are, we do have the 13s. We may drop them back to the 9s because one of the problems with the system is it can't pull enough air through the 13s. We're also looking into adding ionization that would attach itself. And there's a lot that you can do, according to Hyde Stone, with making the virus heavier by adding humidity. So you add humidity and the virus goes from floating in the air to dropping to the ground. At the Innovation Hub, we're adding state-of-the-art filters. In all of our facilities, we're opening windows. When possible, we're pushing kids outside. We had one of our first classes in the Bartel Pavilion on campus. We've put in places that are enclosed, we put air purifiers with ionization capabilities. And we're looking at upgrading the lecture hall and the field house to make sure that we can get air in and out of those so that the virus can't take root.
You put that pavilion in, you never dreamed, huh?
We never dreamed, and it's been great. We've had more bonfires in the last week. Because once the students went through isolation into quarantine, we were able to take them out. I've never seen teenagers so happy to have s'mores in my life.
Tom, as far as, and again, you did state that your thoughts would be that there would be, at this point, at least minimal opportunity for your boarding students to be in the community, but have you considered how that will happen, if and when?
Yeah, so our current plan was to give them a month on campus to really, we know that the 2 weeks was required, but we felt it was really important to get them established for a month. And that's perhaps overly cautious, but the next phase is that we will allow students to sign in and sign out to go into town. We have partnered with Boardingware. Boardingware is a company, and they're quite savvy. They're giving all boarding schools their software for free this year, knowing full well that once they use it, we're going to purchase it in the future. But this allows us to have kids sign in and out with any electronic device that they have, and we can see in real time where they are. We're going to create inbounds and out of bounds areas in town. Obviously, Main Street, our kids love restaurants, whether it's Generations or Players or any of the restaurants on Main Street. Our kids often go on Fridays and Saturday nights and give to the community. They contribute. If the movie theater opens back up, we'll probably do that as well. We're going to be a little cautious early on to see the number of people in town. It does seem like we're going to have a robust September. From my conversations with merchants on Main Street and hotelers, that they're seeing their numbers staying pretty high for the season. I don't know if that's true. You two would know better than I. Yeah, so, we're going to be cautious. We are going to require them to wear masks. They are going to be required to travel with their cohort, and then we'll go from there. I'm the father of 2 daughters who work at Smoke Signals. It was a little hard for me to not go out to restaurants when my kids were working in a restaurant. So I'm not one of those people that has stayed away from our community. What I will say is that our merchants have done an amazing job of enforcing masks. I once entered a restaurant and the person I was with didn't have their mask on and they were scolded immediately, which is great to see. I've been to Generations a number of times for dinner and I have to say that it's a safe environment. So we're going to take a wait and see approach, but I think, Mayor, you will see our kids coming into town on designated hours and designated times. They won't have unfettered access anymore to town Saturday from 9 a.m. till midnight, but we will give them windows when they can go out.
Is sports just for training, or is there going to be any games at all of any sort?
So the guidance that we have right now is that there are games. We're running into a little bit of an issue with ORDA in the sense that we are ready to train and we want to be on the ice. Some of our competitor schools are being allowed to train in their areas, and we're not quite there yet. The one area where we're really having problems is alpine ski racing. Right now, they don't know what they're going to do. It looks like competitions will be regional, meaning that they might host events at Whiteface. We are thinking about possibly sending our kids to train elsewhere, but the number of races they have will be limited. As far as hockey and soccer are concerned, there are certain states right now, a club hockey team can play in from New York State, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. Some states you can't go unless you're from a partnering state. So we will try to travel when we can. We've scheduled everything as if it was a normal year, knowing that it would be easier to take a game and take it off the schedule and try to add one later on. We're hopeful we can travel, but that raises a whole new level of complications. You know, I think we have it easier right now than the public school. If you think about contact points, public school, if it's a family of 5, that's 5 contact points. Because 139 of our students are on campus and about 30 of our faculty are on campus, we know where they are, we know how to control them. Once we send kids out of the area though, then we're gonna have to bring back on some serious measures. That's where testing will happen. Testing was a real concern, it continues to be a concern. We all wanna rely on testing, but with testing coming back 7, 10, 19 days, it's difficult. We're gonna continue to use the Broad Institute, and we're gonna continue to ship those directly to the company because we found great success with them.
I mean, your day students are going to be more of an issue than the boarders.
They are, and right now, they're embedded in the cohort. So my daughter Kate is an alpine ski racer. She is with that cohort. She has a space just off their hall where she can be during the day. She will train with them, she will travel with them. And then we've asked all of our families, day families and faculty, to not leave the region unnecessarily. So that means staying within the North Country and staying in areas where the virus remains relatively low. If they should leave outside of that area, we'd like to know so that we can at least keep an eye on that situation.
How about the borders? You hear the Canadian borders closed. Do you have any students from Canada or Europe or?
Yeah, we do. And that's a funny thing. They were told that their parents couldn't cross the border. What it was, they could cross the border, but when they went back to Canada, they'd be quarantined for 14 days. So we had a half a dozen Canadian citizens walk across the border with their luggage and were picked up on the other side by faculty members. So
you can get across the border.
you can get across the border. The problem is Canada is restricting their citizens, and they take cell phone information and they impose a quite heavy fine if you break the quarantine. So for many of those families, it was difficult for them to get here.
Good job.
Thank you.
Other questions for Tom?
Thank you. And please don't hesitate should any issues arise or if there's any way that we can help.
Tom, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're going to do it again in about an hour with the town board.
Yep.
So this might just be a good trial run.
It was a good trial run. I hope I did okay.
But I would guess that the questions would be similar.
Yeah.
For sure.
And before I go, I just want to thank you all. I know how difficult it is to run anything in a pandemic, but I appreciate the hard work you're doing. And I have to say that the signs on town really made a difference. I saw it firsthand every day. So once those signs went up, the mask use and compliance in town is exceptional.
It made a real difference. It took us from days when we'd have 40% compliance to generally upwards of 90. We still have some problems on the backside of Mirror Lake where there's a mix of different people. There are runners that don't generally use face masks as much as they should. Some of them are running in the road, which is probably dangerous given the work we're doing out there. Question for you before, and I meant to ask this earlier, how does the hub fit into this period of time this year with the school?
So right now the hub is, we're operating 6 classes. Those classes run anywhere from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. And then we have a group of about 20 students that come in for co-curricular robotics. We are planning right now to open up programming. Right now, I'm working with Brian LaValle at the high school to create a build your own and then ride your own longboard. And hopefully we'll get some local kids to jump in on that. And we are also going to offer some college guidance programming and other things. We do have big plans for the hub to be more involved in the community. Recently, the issues with diversity and inclusion, given that Northwood is a very diverse school, 33% of our students are students of color or immigrants. We have Africans, African Americans, Latinos, Asian students, and we are making it a priority to create a lecture series and a dialogue about inclusion and diversity at the hub. That is in the formative stages, but we're planning on bringing it in further on. We're also looking at creating a bunch of other programming. One of them centered around the environment, given how important the environment is in an age of climate change. And we're also looking at trying to bring in one on technology in a rural America, where we can possibly bring in tech leaders to talk about how to bring tech and the kind of programming that we're trying to do at the hub into a place like Lake Placid, because we think it's important for the community.
How are you handling, and this is a question really unrelated to most of the discussion, but with the hub now operating, how are you working out the parking arrangements? Because I know you must at times have a bus.
So the buses do not park. We actually created a rotating schedule of faculty members who will drive and park. If the bus does need to park on Main Street, Flowbird, which is a great addition to the town, I use it daily. We will actually have the bus pay for parking, whatever parking space it is in. Classes are 45 minutes in length, so they're not there long. And there's only 1 or 2 days where a bus needs to sit for a class period. Most of the time, the faculty member who is driving is not in the class, so the bus will depart.
I'm curious because I know at times you must be transporting a growth bigger than what a vehicle does.
I have a class called Democracy in America, which I'm going to ask all of you to participate in if you'd like. Have a discussion on local politics. It's a civics class. There are 25 kids in that class from all over the world. So I'll be calling you all up to come one night and discuss local politics,
Could
which
be interesting.
has a really interesting flavor, right?
If you do start running into some issues with that, talk to us.
I will.
Great.
No, it's been great. Thank you all.
Mindy, you must be happy to hear Flowbird is being recognized.
It's outstanding, really. And I can't tell you how many times I've encouraged local residents to use. Just today, a local contractor was paying at the meter and yeah. Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Don. Okay. Introducing our next topic this evening, we have Dean Dietrich here, who is speaking and addressing the board with respect to some activities and recommendations of the Land Use Steering Committee. Dean?
Mr. Broderick said high bar. I've spoken to you enough, you don't expect me to reach those heights, so it's okay. I'm here tonight, as Mayor Randall suggested, on behalf of the Land Use Code Steering Committee. And just to reiterate one more time, the committee is composed of people who have had a great deal of experience in the recent land use code. 2 of the members were former chairs of the review board and also served on the group that wrote the 2011 land use code. That'd be Bill Billoway and myself. We have Dan Keller, who does a lot of zoning work for the APA and has done work with the Development Commission about economic development. He's on it. Liz Clark, who is a professional consultant and knows a lot about RFPs, is on it. Jackie Kelly, who is currently a review board member, is on it. We also have representatives of the building office. Mike or Darcy show up every meeting. We have a village board representative, is Mr. Devlin, and Ms. Kilburn is the town board representative. And we do have Tim Smith on the speed dial, and he comes in periodically. So that group has been working since May. We've been meeting every Tuesday. I don't think we missed any Tuesdays. And the group is a great group to work with, and that most of them, just about everybody has been at every single meeting. And we've made a great deal of progress. We're almost done with phase one. And phase one is an internal scoping where these people who have been working with the land use code said, here are the problems we've seen since 2011. After phase one is completed, we will be moving forward with an RFP and getting a consultant on board. My goal would be that would be a Christmas present. We would have the consultant on board by Christmas. He or she or that corporation, that group would work for 3 or 4 months with the land use code committee. At that point in time, we'd go into phase two. We would reach out to stakeholder groups, and the different stakeholders, we would contact those groups, have a series of meetings. How exactly that will work will be determined in consultation with the consultants, but we anticipate a whole series of meetings so we can tell the public, these are the changes that we see we need. What else do we need to do? And that will be a dialogue. After that takes place, the consultant then will take that information, work with the land use code committee to draft a new land use code or a revised land use code, at which point in time we'll bring it to you, to the two municipal boards. You will have a public hearing and hopefully everything goes. So we think that whole process, after we get the consultant on board, we think we'll be about a year away. We're about 2 or 3 months from getting a consultant on board. So we're working diligently and moving.
How long until you put out RFPs?
We hope in a month and a half. I say that, and the schedule's been moving along pretty well as we thought it would move along. There are always black swans. I mean, there's always things that pop up you don't expect. But I think we're just about finished our internal scoping and ready to move forward with the RFP. And the idea of the internal scoping was we have to be able to tell a consultant, you have to deal with these issues. Otherwise, a consultant doesn't know, what they need to do for us, and they can't give us a good estimate of the cost. So that's why that is.
But the RFP would go out from the respective boards with their approval.
Yes.
And are you talking about the land use, are you talking about changing the master plan?
Not the comprehensive plan, no.
Isn't that the basis of all zoning?
The comprehensive plan is a separate document, and usually what happens in planning is the comprehensive plan is put into place. The comprehensive plan has general goals like you should promote mixed
No, I'm
economic.
aware of that, but I don't think it's been redone in years.
The last time the comprehensive plan was done was 2014. That's correct.
Just a thought.
Yep.
Because that's the building, I assume a consultant's going to want to see that.
Absolutely. And when we
Wonder if it's up to date enough.
Absolutely. And when we were given our marching orders by the town and village boards, this is not so much as a total revision of the land use code as it is taking a look at what changes need to be made. And one of the things that was done very recently, of course, was the thing that drove it was the short-term rental legislation. And the short-term rental legislation did not fit into the districts and the land use code as we had. So this is not so much as a revision as a revamping. I guess I could say it's hard to determine where you start developing a new vision. But we are really trying to do that at the same time, trying to fix some of the problems that have arisen over the last 10 years of the use of the code. So you are correct. It will be a total revision as we move along. The principles are basically the same as we adapted in 2011, which are we need to incorporate technology a little bit better. We need to move forward with affordable housing. We need to develop mixed use, economic use. Those are the provisions that basically drove, and smart growth. Those are the provisions which drove the 2011 land use code. And our marching orders from the two boards when we started this process were to continue along with those provisions. So we have not looked at changing the comprehensive plan. What we did do, though, is that when we started, one of the things that we are obviously going to do is look at short-term rental legislation and how does it fit into our existing section. One of the problems that we had, one of the things that was always discussed as we move forward was when we put the short-term rental regulations in place, there have been a lot of discussions about a moratorium. We have a lot of information now that we did not have 2 months ago. We just developed a GIS map, and we can tell how many 14-day rental units are in each district. We can tell how many unhosted rental units are in each district. We can determine how many rental hosted units are in each district. We didn't have that before. We have that information now. That's going to allow us to redraw the district lines to make it fit better, make it fit into the desires of the town and village boards a little bit better. It was very difficult, for instance, when the village is protecting half of Johnson Avenue and half of Johnson Avenue is in the town, to have a different short-term rental regulations on one side of that block or the other, where there's really no characteristic changes in that block. So that's what we are talking to the consultant about. Let's do that. And we also, one of the things you also talked about was protecting those neighborhoods where perhaps short-term rentals had not appeared. So we have some neighborhoods which do not have a lot of short-term rentals. And now that we have all the locations and the registrations, we can identify those neighborhoods that perhaps you wanted to protect. I think that request came more from the town board, some of their neighborhoods, but you had the same interest. So now we have that information, we can move forward. And as I say, the first paragraph here of Proposition 1 is, that's basically what we talked about. Once we get the rental registration permit system in place, that we can garner a lot of information, take a look at that information and move forward. We also don't, by the way, have information about what exactly is the economic impact. How many people are not coming up because some units were taken out of the market. What effect does it actually have? And we can get a better, now that the regulations are in place, we don't have to speculate about what effect they have. We can actually get some empirical data about that. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to Proposition 2. There is movement. We're shooting at a moving target. And the question is, why should we allow the target to move? And the answer that we had was we shouldn't, especially if we're talking about perhaps protecting a neighborhood. You're talking about looking at a neighborhood that has fewer short-term rentals in it and maybe adding some protection to that neighborhood. If that is where you were moving, does it make any sense to allow more people to move into that, more short-term rentals to move into that neighborhood? And so, if you're going to close the barn door, you don't do it after the horse leaves the barn. So now we know where the horse is. Maybe the idea at this point in time is to take a look at take a pause and find out exactly where everything is. And that's why we come up to conclusion number 3, which is the committee is asking you at this point in time to consider a moratorium. And a moratorium would not mean that we do a couple of things. Right now we have 420 some odd, right? Was it for rental unit permits?
409.
409, and there are 56 or 57 in identified units where units that are advertising that have not yet registered. So most people have advertised, most people have registered. And what we are saying is a moratorium would simply say, look, starting at this particular date, when the moratorium is, we just don't issue any more permits. It's a moratorium on the permits. So the 450, 60 units that are registered would be able to register. That would give us a handle on, exactly what the situation is. The target would stop moving, so we could move more effectively with our issues.
It's the village and the town. So
yes,
we're proposing the town as well. It's going to do.
Yes, I'm meeting with the town in about half an hour. So we are the same request is going to both the village and the town, and it would require some coordination. I suppose you both move forward with separate moratoriums. We did. I don't think I attached this to your packet. Everybody knows how graceful I caught myself. Of course, how a moratorium proceeds is up to the attorney. Sorry, we did certify my hand before I went over. But you would have we got these from the New York State Department of State. Someone on the committee passed them along to me. I don't know who exactly did. Like I say, we have a pretty good working committee. I would probably have ordered these in a different number. 2 and 3 really are findings that you have to make before you move forward, I believe. You have to have a valid purpose for justifying a moratorium. I think I've just outlined a valid purpose because we wish to move forward with short-term rental units regulations. You have to address a situation where the burden imposed by a moratorium is being shared by the community, the public at large. If you listened to all of us, I think we're at those three 1 hour or more than 1 hour public meetings, and we know that short-term rentals are a burden with the community and the public at large. We are opposed. We think, I've told you why we think 12 months is a reasonable time frame. It should fit into the consultant schedule. And we're having a time certain when the moratorium will expire basically on that. Number 4 is up to your attorney. You have to strictly adhere to the procedure for the adoption if you wish to move forward, which of course would include the predicate notices, the proper amount of time before a public hearing. And so we believe that all the criteria for a moratorium or the ability to call a moratorium is in place. Of course, we have to defer to Ms. Bliss, but something we are requesting that we move forward with the moratorium. And I'll leave it at that. If anyone has any questions.
I think at this point, there are some other matters that Janet will need to address, and for those, since it involves litigation, I'm going to defer any further conversation on this at this time to an executive session discussion. Allow that to happen.
An executive session is totally up to you. I would offer my attendance if you want, but I can understand if you would rather not have me there also. So I would just say, let me know.
It's if you have the time, that would be good.
I'll make the time for you, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly recognizing that tonight we have back-to-back public board meetings here, so I only have this room until 6.
And it was nice. I am going to, so I think what we're saying is at this point in time, the board is deferring action. I don't think about it. Is that what I can take back to my group?
I wouldn't say that there wouldn't be some action post-executive session. We never know that.
Okay. Wishes to discuss the matter before.
So Scott, they'll probably show up at 5.
You want me to wait till 5 o'clock?
I mean, we're going to go through our other business and, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a curve at you, and I hate to do this. I always try to get the information to you ahead of time. But this came out of this morning's land use code committee. And so it was fine, decided that we would like to move forward in this about 9:30, before my tennis match, about 9:30 this morning. But the thought occurred to us that while we're doing our internal scoping, we found 3 areas where it would probably be good to move quicker rather than slower. And if you decide to have a public hearing for the moratorium, why not double it up? And so we are requesting that if you move forward, I think we would like to do it. You have to decide the most efficacious way to do this. But if you're going to have a hearing, it'd be great to have these done. And the first 2 are adding 2 new definitions. I counted them up the other day. The 2011 land use code, the 2000 land use code had 275 definitions in the definition section. We reduced it to 75 in the 2011 land use code. A lot of them we put in, the definition should be where you're talking about the subject, but we cut a lot of definitions. 2 definitions which really didn't matter to the review board because it was a kind of a separate issue were condominium association and homeowners association. So we took them out. But they are referenced in your new short-term rental legislation. So it would probably be a good idea just to put them back in. So the headings there for each section explain why we are looking to do this. So those 2 we'd say it makes sense to do them because they are critical to the administration of short-term rentals. So if they're part of the legislation, we should do it. Secondly, realign the standards with a uniform fire code to create a more comprehensive approach to safety. And I think, to some degree, it was a change in philosophy in the building office and Mike's philosophy as opposed to Jim's philosophy. What we tried to do in 2011 was take 100 pages of safety regulations and condense them to a couple paragraphs and put them in the code for reference for developers. And Mike has found out that it's better to just reference the fire code because it's a more comprehensive list and a better list. So that, and there's sprinkler systems are something we don't want to mess with. The quicker we get safety, the quicker we are. And the one section
Is
is,
this new construction or?
this is for new construction. Although the uniform fire code would also apply to changes in use.
Somebody wants.
But they apply this in the code now.
Yes, they do. And it's causing, the fact is having them separate in the code is causing some confusion, and they don't quite match up also anymore because there's been changes to the uniform fire code since 2011. So in certain instances, what we put in doesn't match quite up with what they have. And so what we're suggesting is to get rid of that confusion, which seems to be a confusion which is ongoing. We could live with it if you don't have a public hearing. But if you're going to have a public hearing, that's one thing that we think you should straighten out right away. It has to do with safety. And the two sections there are 4.6.7G, which deals with sprinkler sessions. And the other one is 7.1.4F, which considers design considerations for roads. And those are design considerations for roads. I don't want to get too technical, but they basically are for fire vehicles or emergency or ambulances. So there's got to be turnaround. And it's not like we ever allow any development to be created without a good turnaround. I think it's a communication issue and an issue of being more comprehensive by relating to the fire code. So we made a change, and it's not quite as good as we would like. We put that as a priority item because it's safety. It's not something we should really have to worry about too much.
Based on our experience with Otter Way, Mike, does the uniform fire code actually prefer hammerheads? Because we kind of took a different view.
There's options, but you got to turn.
Yeah.
So we can design turnarounds different ways, but in most situations, the easiest is that.
So the fire code doesn't specify hammerheads.
I don't recall exactly the wording, what it specifies.
One of the reasons we put hammerheads in the 2011 land use code is because at that point in time, we thought they were better. And then the idea was that you do less clearing, you have smaller roads, instead of having a big circle, you have a hammerhead. It's just smaller. Thinking is changing. So it's partly why we want the change.
Maybe a particular application didn't work out quite the way it was envisioned.
And one of the other changes between the Uniform Fire Code and this is that the Uniform Fire Code gives a little bit more power to the health officer to say, look, these are the regulations, but the terrain doesn't really fit here, so you just can't do it. Where this gives it to the review board, and it's appropriate, I think, to give it to the.
Why wouldn't the area of pavement be spelled out just like everything else?
It
Because
may
we
be.
have minimum requirements right now in the code of how wide it has to be, and why would you leave that?
It looks like a wide road is.
No, but why would you leave it up to the review board as to how wide the pavement has to be?
That's what was in the design, but I'm saying get rid of it. Because the fire code is very specific.
No, the new current design, okay.
Yeah, that's what we want to get rid of.
Gotcha.
You just came up with another reason to do it, thank you.
Yeah. Who knows, yeah.
And I apologize, it's in note format, hot off the presses.
I know there are issues that have come up in recent months about some subdivision work where roads haven't necessarily wanted to meet the
And
recommended
sidewalks.
standards.
The fire code requires sidewalks because we've had problems in developments where there's no sidewalks.
No, I think that's a design infrastructure thing, whether the village wants to, of course, they have to put sidewalks in.
Generally sidewalks can, one of the things we did too with the 2011 land use code is talk about sidewalks and give bonding capacity, because a few times before 2011, developer promised to do sidewalks and then just kind of ran away from the project before the sidewalks were put in. And so we said, no, you got to put a bond. If we're going to require sidewalks, you have to give us
Right,
a
but
bond.
I mean,
Or painted a white line, and which is long since disappeared.
So we did give the review board more power in terms of sidewalks. We did not make it mandatory in every area because it didn't make sense in every area in the town and village. but I think we did. And I have to go back and look at that. Now I'm talking about stuff that happened a number of years ago. And I'm going to stop trusting my memory.
I'm just asking because of the problems with, that you just mentioned.
Yeah. And page 2 there are a few developments and they're just typos. I say one of my favorite lines is, maybe I can't blame it on this, but whoever invented spell check should go straight to hello. Because there are some formatting, there are some issues that I think are spell check. I can't blame it on this one. We refer, the district is called rural countryside, and it's called rural countryside probably in 200 places. But at 4.6.4D sub 1, for some reason, we refer to it as residential countryside. And the problem now is if you have a development there, it references the district and it has some language that references the language in the code that goes. And so we should clean that up just to mix it. The same thing happened with the pre-existing plan unit development districts. We listed all the ones. We left out, oh no, we didn't leave them. I don't know if we left them out, but we called it Fawn Ridge Drive instead of Fawn Ridge LLC. I think that's what happened. So it was not left off the list, but it should be for the developments that are taking place on Fawn Ridge, particularly the affordable housing one, should reference the same thing in all documents. And in the land use code, it's called Fawn Ridge Drive, but in the PDF that the plan development that was given in the 1990s, it's called Fawn Ridge LLC. So we just should, if that development's moving forward, it's just a clerical error that would help them in terms of their documentation. And we should take care, if you can take care of that, you can. If not, they could probably live with it for a year, but if we can take care of those and you're having a public meeting anyway, we're suggesting move forward with it. And those, of course, will be subject to review, and Janet, I'm sure we'll get into work with Tim.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else I can do? You want me to wait around a while? Or?
So you're welcome to if you'd like. Actually, the executive session will follow our addressing the other items on the agenda.
Well,
Just before you have to be there for the town.
Well, I have to be at the town side.
We will be done by 6.
We will be done by 6, all right.
5:45.
Well,
Nobody has anything to say about it.
See, if we weren't recorded, I'd say I was gonna run out and get a beer, but I can't say that because we're being recorded.
You're already recorded.
See you soon. Well, I'll hang around if you don't mind.
Okay, no, you're welcome to.
Well, I shouldn't say that. Is that right, Emily?
Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion at this point to table under clerk items the village board meeting minutes of August 17th. Just to give our clerk time enough to get them completed.
Thank you.
Is there a motion? Mark?
Second.
Yeah.
Peter seconds.
It's you and I are.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Nina, you can
Thank you. Sorry about that.
present those at the next meeting in 2 weeks. That would be great. I've had a busy several days working with Labor Council, and I think all of our department labor agreements were up for renewal. 4 of them were up for renewal, and one of them was in arbitration mediation from last July. So I'm happy to say that one got taken care of. So what you have in front of you tonight are memorandums of understanding. The first one representing the Lake Placid Village Water Department and Teamsters. And as you can see, these all took place last week, so they're still in handwritten form. But generally, this is what would appear in a new contract. So contract would extend from August 1, 2020 through July 31st of 2023. It'll be a 3-year renewal. Certain articles will change, which really is our language issues, no particular impact otherwise. Number 2 is basically providing a 66 cent per hour wage increase for each of the years 2020, 21, and 22. And again, unfortunately, I didn't bring the current contract with me, but it refers to high and low numbers. The low numbers will all remain the same. All employees currently employed would receive a 66-cent raise each year in August. And I think the high and low may have represented existing versus new hires. The deductible for health insurance is increasing for $1,600 this coming year for a single plan, $3,200 for a two-person employee and child and/or family plan. The co-insurance will increase to 20%. Out-of-pocket maximums are going to increase to, I think, from $2,600 to $3,200 and from $5,200 to $6,400. That's basically information that's been accepted. The village will, this is language we're adding to all of our contracts because occasionally healthcare or health insurance providers change their plans. We don't always have the opportunity to stay with the current plan. So we're adding language which is agreed that will allow the village to make what is substantially a comparable change in policies. Anything more than that needs to be negotiated. Item 5, uniform boot allowance, it's increasing to $900. I think that's $150 if I remember correctly, increase. And some of these things haven't been changed in a few years, so that may sound like a big change, but in terms of what the either special clothing or boots, prices keep going up on us. So I have brought this to the board tonight. With your blessing, I can advise the Teamsters on behalf of the water department that the village is
So moved.
Second.
will then authorize us to go to a fund. We'll insert this into the contract. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The mayor votes in the affirmative, of course. Anytime the mayor doesn't vote in affirmative on one of these, I'm in deep trouble. Okay. The next one was the Lake Placid fire drivers. And again, very similar changes there. They've agreed to a 3-year contract. By the way, this will help the next mayor and the next board. They won't have to look at most of these for 3 years, 2.5 years. There's some language updates. Again, item 1. In this case, the wage adjustment, which is Schedule A in the actual contract, as identified by an appendix, is going to represent a 2% per year increase. These are numbers that we can comfortably accommodate within the budget without change at this time. Health is same information on health insurance. The changes there on deductibles and co-pays. Again, it's just bringing it up to current language. And item 4, again, the same situation. If a health insurance policy provider changes the plan or withdraws a plan, we can insert a plan that is comparable in terms of coverage. If it's not comparable, then we will obviously be back at the bargaining table. And in this case, they asked to increase for our fire drivers because of residency issues and trying to find drivers, and quite often, although they may be required to live in the village, obviously there's, as we all know, housing is still a problem. So they're asking that housing allowance of $1,250 be increased to $1,500. That was largely in lieu of any other changes in terms of clothing or equipment that is required by each employee in that department. Also new, but something that I've advocated for when we appointed Justin to the head driver. You may recall that there was some discussion about training, which is a very critical part of the fire department. It's ongoing, not only for the drivers, but also for every volunteer firefighter, is to recognize one of our employees to be determined by the village and the department who performs training services to the drivers and volunteers to receive extra compensation of $20 a week. If you think about how serious training and maintaining training records and programs is, this is well within good reason for us to do. It also assigns that responsibility to one of our employees, so we're not wondering who's doing it. Obviously, it's subject to ratification by the union membership. I understand that that's not, that may, if it hasn't already happened, it's about to. And again, item 8 was an amendment of some language. And sometimes what we do is, instead of giving the employee direct cash, which if the employee goes, some of our employees buy from a supply house where we can recognize and leverage their money a little better for them, because the village doesn't have to pay or doesn't pay sales tax. If they take that same compensation in the form of cash and go there, they have to pay sales tax. So it diminishes the value of the clothing and food allowances that were uniform allowances that we're offering our employees. In this case, we purchased gift cards, which they can then go and buy. The village is paying for those, so there's no sales tax. They get the full value of the allowance, so that's why that's in there. Once again, I indicated acceptance. The fire drivers have always, this was interesting. They're usually the first department that has to negotiate. They're one of our smaller units with only, I believe, probably 5 members. So they're always a little bit nervous about leading off and then having every other department say, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? So actually this time they were second to last. So anyway, the negotiations went, from what Brian Kremer described to me, went very smoothly this year for them. They really didn't ask for things that we would have had difficulty with.
So moved.
Peter seconds. Any further discussion on that one? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the mayor votes aye. So that will ratify those 2 agreements tonight. The next item we have is, it's really a membership. The last couple of years, I've kept the membership with the Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board. Art, I know you're familiar with it from work they do every April and meetings they have. But this is a board that it's composed of mostly representatives that are appointed by county legislatures, but it serves as a watchdog for activities that are going on in the Adirondack Park. It's created by the legislature for this purpose. And in particular, I think they work very closely in monitoring issues that are coming up in front of the Adirondack Park Agency. The annual membership, if you would, is $300. It's very typical of this organization, which is sensitive to municipalities. The agreement that creates that really portrays this as $300 for the services that they provide to this village and all of the other municipalities that are members around the Adirondack Park. Highly endorse it. It's when you need them, they're always there.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Mayor votes in favor, of course. Next item we have the annual meeting of the MAUA, or Municipal Electric Utilities Association, as it's known, is taking place on September 8th. This year it's going to be a virtual meeting, so you're not seeing a request to authorize electric department personnel to travel any place. But we do have to designate the delegate, and in this case, I'm recommending that Kimball Davy, who's the electric department superintendent, be designated as the accredited delegate of the village of Lake Placid for this year's annual meeting and voting purposes.
So moved.
Second.
Art, Peter.
Supposed to be a roll call vote.
Okay. Okay. Deputy Mayor Devlin, aye. Trustee Holdery, aye. Mayor Randall, aye.
Evelyn,
Let
thank
the
you.
record show that trustees Monroe and Leon are absent.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that will accommodate that. This virtual stuff does have some benefits, at least in terms of the budget. Next item we have, I'm sad, but we've known this was coming for a while. We have a 33-year veteran of the police department who has announced his intention to retire and separate from the department from full-time service, at least effective November 26, 2020. And that is Chuck Langlois, who's been a long time member of the department. While he's separating as a full-time person, he has expressed interest in being available to the department on an on-call part-time basis, which I think will probably work out with the department. So it's with a very grateful appreciation for his years of service, and wishing him the very best in the years ahead, that we accept the notice of retirement and separation from the department of Chuck Langlois. I'd like to have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes.
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Really?
I sent out 2 emails.
Yeah.
I posted
No.
Okay,
I think that will work.
it's a work day today, right?
Yes.
We figured that's what it was.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay, the next item we have is item G, Jason, under clerk items. It's a request from the water department to send Timothy Manning to the training session on automatic control valves operation and maintenance. It's taking place October 8th in Ticonderoga. And the cost for that will be, as a member, it will be $80. In this case here, it doesn't look like we're going to have any travel expense. Virtual. Total expense is $130 for the session. This is part of the requirement of keeping their credentials.
I actually think it's just 80. I believe we're members, so.
Yeah, that was my thought too.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
I raised my hand, so I'm like, I'm not on Zoom. I'm so confused.
Well, don't get completely accustomed to not being on Zoom, because the format of virtual meetings has been extended to at least until October 4th. So we'll still be able to, and I will tell you, I'm going to recommend and advocate that we keep, that we maintain for the benefit of our public. I mean, we've got a good number of people tonight who are actually stayed beyond the presentation that Dean was giving, and I think that's good. The next item we have is the annual fall New York Conference of Mayors Fall Training School, which is open to trustees, department heads, anybody else, Art? I think it's a primary group. This year, it ordinarily would have been held at the Crown Plaza here in Lake Placid. And I'm sad to report that because of the meeting conditions that are associated with COVID-19, that NICOM was not able to fulfill the meeting in that manner, so they're offering it on a virtual basis. And you have attached to the registration form, I think, almost 3 days worth of virtual programs, which you can sign in and out of as you might choose. So what I'd like to do, if any of this makes sense, is to authorize any trustee or department head who may be interested.
I think you've added review board.
Review board and
In the past.
certainly the development commission that wishes to sign into these. Dean will get you a copy of these. Would be helpful, or Mike's office for sure. As depending on where this this may actually almost be a more interesting way of getting people to carve out what time they need to for specific topics, as opposed to spending a whole day or sometimes 2 days at these events. Hopefully we'll come back in the future, because I know this is a coveted event for Lake Placid.
Right.
And we're disappointed this year that this one fell to the COVID issues. So if I could have that motion.
Second.
Peter. Any further question or discussion on that? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have the pleasure of announcing that we've received a application to authorize a new firefighter member to our Lake Placid Volunteer Fire Department. The individual is Brooke Paris, P-A-R-I-D-S. She lives here in the village. She lives at 51 Balsam Street. I guess it's not in the village. Or maybe a little piece of it is now. In any event, you have copies of her application in front of you. She has been fully vetted by the procedures of the volunteer firefighters, and they've completed their part of the work. It's now come up to us to recognize and vote her into membership of the volunteer fire department.
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor? Any abstentions? Okay. So be happy to inform the department that they have an additional member. That's good news tonight. The Northwood School each year submits a request to the village board for two things. One, for permission to operate two four-stroke small motorboat engines on Mirror Lake during the fall and spring sessions of their school rowing program and crew. That has operated successfully with no comment in the years that I've been in office, so I think we can safely do that. Item two, in connection with that, and again, this is the same person that does this year after year, is for Peter Davis to be authorized to install 3 parallel buoy lines using underwater cables in Mirror Lake to form 2 lanes for use by Northwood crew. I can tell you that we're ratifying that because the lanes are already in place.
Yeah, we actually did it on email last week, so it should have said ratified.
So
moved. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Tom, he's taking that back with him. And then finally, under clerk items, there's a request from Songs of the Lake Committee, looking ahead to next year and the hope that they're going to be able to host a 7-concert calendar starting on Tuesdays, starting June 29th, 4 days, 4 Tuesdays in July and 2 more in August.
Bill is on the line if anyone has any questions.
Okay. And I think consistent with what we've done the last 2 or 3 years for Songs of the Lake, they bulleted the arrangements that allow them to display their banners on the day of the event and to have 2 banners in the, these are side vertical banners that actually list their concerts and major sponsors during the actual concert, and that they be allowed to have a table where typically they and the band that evening are vending either T-shirts or CDs with their music, that sort of thing.
In other words, no changes.
No changes.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Any questions for Bill?
Thank you.
Yes, we're all looking forward to next year. Bill, any comments that you'd like to add?
No, thanks. No additional comments. Just here's hoping that we can do it next year. We were sorely missed any kind of entertainment down there this year, and hopefully next year we can get it done. And I appreciate your support.
Let's all hope that next year brings conditions so that we can have this type of enjoyment again. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Clerk, is there any other items for this evening from your
No,
area?
there are
Okay, so we'll move on to the treasurer's section. Mindy, anything you want to add before we address the warrant?
no. Okay.
In that case, then, we have affidavit number 2 of the current budget year, 2020-21, representing bills in the amount of $1,095,903.74. And in addition to that, there are refund checks that went to utility customers amounting to $4,250, which we're being asked to authorize this evening. I'll be happy to read the breakdown.
Second.
Peter, Art, any questions or discussions? You all received the detail on how the individual items. If not, I will call a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes. Moving right on.
Anything else?
Under new business tonight, our electric department is going to be entering into a period where the community will experience a power interruption that is estimated to last 4 hours. For the sake of having the least impact on business or our schools, it will begin midnight, September 16th, and end at 4 a.m. on Thursday, September 17th. In the event that there's an issue that causes an outage, that will be posted to the village's website and Facebook pages as well. And perhaps we would ask the town to do likewise on theirs, since we serve the town as well. The outage is necessary. I think folks are aware of the fact that over the last year, the village has been adding a switching station at the substation behind the firehouse to allow electricity to go around that substation and go on to the electric department's original fire station, which is called Sub 3. Don't ask me, Sub 2 went away a long time ago. What this will allow us to do is it gives us an option when Sub 1 behind the firehouse has a problem. That shuts down the entire village. We have no way of bypassing that and going to the other substation. But the ability to do that would allow the village, in the event of an outage of that nature, to continue to power the majority of the village for the duration of an outage. Right now, today, that's not possible. So we've completed a switching mechanism at substation number 1. which is capable now of diverting the power. The outage for 4 hours will allow National Grid to make the conversion of the primary 115 kV line coming into the village to be connected to the new equipment, which will allow for the switches to work the way I just described them. That we expect won't take all of 4 hours, but to be prudent, there is 4 hours. I would also add that the department is proposing to use those 4 hours to upgrade equipment in various locations around the system, mostly replacement of porcelain insulators, which are bad. So we will be authorizing our department to work those 4 hours. That will create some what appears to be modest overtime. In order to cover all the different locations that they want to do upgrades of either that or I think a couple cases some switching units, which again will help to improve the reliability of the service. The village of Tupper Lake has indicated that they will also provide two line crews to assist us in the project so that we can get that all done in the 4-hour window that we're down, so that when we come back up, we've not only accomplished the primary purpose, but we've tied in some other things that we wouldn't ordinarily be able to do without the power outage. So that's the explanation. And we put this indication out, I think, Anita, every place that we could think of.
Yes.
Wanting to make sure that people have that knowledge.
There's something.
One item I did not put on under new business, but during the work session of the village board last week, we are looking at parking meter rates as it relates to the municipal parking lot in front of the post office. I don't think we're ready yet tonight to act on that, but I'm hopeful it will have resolutions that would support that and supporting information for our next regular meeting, and then would determine an appropriate time for that to become effective. I am happy to say, though, in connection with, Mindy, you could give this report, but while we saw a significant lack of traffic in Lake Placid up until the beginning of the summer season, that our parking meter revenues were ahead of last year for the months of July and August, which I think is pretty consistent with a very high level of traffic that we've seen throughout the village for these last 2 months. So, and that may also have a lot to do with the fact that the meters actually are working. You may recall that we struggled to maintain the former equipment, which was just, as it turned out, was pretty much worn out.
And those meters are now at scrap yard.
Disintegrating.
As long as they're not down the highway, we're all set. We got what we could out of them.
We got what we could out of them. There wasn't much of an aftermarket.
Were you able to sell any of the parts out of it?
No, we did a trade-off with McKay because we had their meter much longer than we were supposed to.
Good.
Never got sent back by the previous parking enforcement officer. So instead of charging us for it, we sent the CPU back and
We're
we liked it good.
certainly happy to hear that. Is there any other new business items that anyone wishes to bring up at the moment? If not, I'll move on to old business, and most of these are quick. The Main Street reconstruction project, we're all waiting with high interest, September 23rd, which will be the date that interested contractors in the Main Street reconstruction project will be submitting their bids for the project. And as soon as those have been received and opened, they'll be handed to our engineers to review and provide some recommendations. we're very hopeful that, that this allows us to move forward. I spoke this morning with the Business Association briefly, just updating them. I did indicate that presuming that we have a successful bid, we would, I will be reactivating the larger Main Street task group that we had in place before the COVID virus kind of slowed things down. And I also understand that the Department of Transportation, where we're awaiting working permits for the project, may also be interested in seeing what the bid outcomes are. So we're waiting with bated breath for that next step. As far as the Main Street parking lot project is concerned, there's a small subcommittee that's continued to work throughout the summer. Much of our work has been, thanks to Peter, has involved where we've engaged conversations with adjacent property owners. There are some adjustments in property lines that would be desirable to get a project that will be, I think, very acceptable to the community. Those are still ongoing, although I think, Peter, we're probably getting close now.
Yeah. 2 out of 3 at least.
Yeah. No, we need 3 out of 3. Okay. Land use code update. Art, did you want to add anything?
I think Dean said it all. And as far as the big short-term rental updates, as of 8:30 this morning, I think, Mike, if I've got this right, there are 409 people signed up. And 56 more people are still shown to be renting, but not with permits, and letters have been sent out again. And as far as the current permits of the 409, the 256 in the village and 173 in the town.
That works out to about 58% village. I was surprised at the
It
relationship.
changed just this morning a little bit, but it was pretty close, pretty close.
I was surprised that the relationship wasn't higher in the village, because I think we sort of feel, and everybody feels, that they're all around us. But
We ended up at 56 condos in the town.
true, yeah. So
Do we have an idea where the 56, I'm assuming the 56 that you mentioned?
I haven't tracked it.
What's that?
I haven't tracked it yet. Some of them on Main Street, some of them are.
So we can't identify if they're in the village?
I didn't do that, I could.
Okay.
but typically, I think it's fair to say that host compliance, Mike, is working very well
Yes.
in terms of the hotline, the complaint service that they're able to provide. I know I did receive a lengthy email from one of our village residents. Maybe he's right on the village line now that I think about it. But with concerns, but again, and that's probably one of the 56 that hasn't signed up yet, I would
No,
guess.
there's one that the gentleman sent the email about is registered. They're doing everything in can to comply. The concerted effort by the local neighbors to complain about this property, no matter what happens, whether it reaches the level. And his information was 2 days too late. So if the issue was happening, that's when you're supposed to call.
Right.
Don't call and moan about it 2 days later, because I can't prove that it happened at that point. That's why we had the 24-hour person showing up, telling us what happened, witnessing it, and then reporting back.
So I think you make a good point, Mike, and that is, and this, even though some of our people that were participating virtually have left, but I think for those that remain, it's important for folks to understand that that hotline is available 24/7, and the time to communicate a concern that you have is while it's happening, so that we can document, Mike, I think the actual activities that are happening. And in the case of the one complaint that I received over the weekend, it was well after the event had occurred. And at that point, no matter who we sent out there, it's probably difficult to.
So who answers? Who's, if you call the hotline, who goes in this? Because I guess,
24-hour contract.
You remember we
You have to have a.
yeah.
so
The call goes to California host compliance, and then the person who's supposed to be the caretaker for the property is the one that's contacted.
It's kind of like when they call 911, it goes to E-Town, back up in Placid. But just to kind of comment on what you're saying, if it's within the village, they could call the police.
No.
So I just,
No. We want the complaints to go to host compliance so that we get a documented record of the various types of complaints.
I guess
There's
my-
a caretaker for the property that is supposed to be no more than 1 hour away.
Sure.
And that's the first line of where the complaint goes. If my understanding is, if in fact that is not successful, then Mike, how does host compliance let the next level of
Yeah.
You know,
surveillance?
I would say, to answer Jason's question, I would say call for, if that egregious and that annoying, call for.
Because I think I'm just trying to communicate it in the terms of whoever is there. Because I'm disposed to kind of like maybe, not that a caretaker isn't going to fulfill their responsibilities, but generally they would be inclined to minimize that because that is the property and they want to maintain a job. I just,
And if it's bad enough, at least they're minutes away instead of an hour.
okay, that's, okay.
The owner, every owner that I've had to deal with a complaint has been very proactive to the point of throwing people out.
I have to agree. I think that there.
Jason, remember.
And there's been a concerted effort to be.
Jason, do remember that the ultimate penalty here is if there's not compliance and that permit, Mike has it within his authority to revoke it.
Yeah.
That's, and frankly, I would assume from what Mike is saying, that most of the owners are being proactive about making sure that they correct their, whatever issue they're dealing with.
Sure, I think it's just from a public's perspective, they're like, well, who do I call? If they call the hotline and the mechanics of it, I think unless you are one of living next to a habitual, a short-term rental that is habitually having issues, you might just every once in a while like, well, I should call somebody. Who do I call? The hotline. Okay, who am I talking to? From the general public's perspective, it's a little bit more vague than we are in it since we've had the discussions.
Keep in mind that every property has to have a representative. And that's the first line of defense. We want to activate that. We also want host compliance to get that call so that we get a complete record of the types of complaints that we're getting, which we've never been able to do before. Remember when we were involved in public hearings, people would say, well, the police department has records. They have records of a complaint, but it doesn't necessarily, it never defined who, where, or what.
Or whether it was a short-term rental or not.
So I guess the whole I see is that, and I guess it's predominantly it falls on the town board members. If you call them post compliance and then they get the caretaker, then whatever is transpired has come to an end within that hour. But then it's like, okay, you just missed it, so you didn't witness it. And then next weekend, it's the same thing.
Well, I think you're hearing,
You're kind of
Mike,
stuck in
yeah,
that
I think
loop.
you're hearing Mike say that's not what's happening. And it's probably late at night when it's happening. So if somebody goes
Actually,
there.
a lot of complaints are coming in prior to the noise ordinance limitations, which
Yeah.
they're not violation. People think because somebody's sitting outside at 8 o'clock at night having a conversation with a cigar, that it's annoying. Okay, maybe it is to you, but you either go ask them nicely, could you take it down a notch, or do something else, because it's not a violation of any local law.
No, I agree. I had to listen to someone attempt to learn to play guitar on the porch. And it was just like, is this really happening? They're well within the rights to practice guitar on the porch. It's just I have to put headphones in or something. So I can understand that. And I think the general public can differentiate between, hopefully they can differentiate between annoying and flat issues. So.
The last thing on the list here is local government communication plan update. At this point, I believe that Kate is working with you
Yes,
and
we've had
Mindy
2
and
meetings
Lori.
with her.
Okay, and you're setting out I think you've set out a game plan on where you want to go, but at this point, I haven't been involved, so that's about it.
Okay, moving ahead under mayor items, I don't really have anything additional to add right now. I would draw your attention, however, to the correspondence piece, which is a letter from New York State Department of Transportation. It outlines in pretty good detail work that they will be doing on Route 86, extending from Hillcrest Avenue here in the village to the railroad tracks leading out to Saranac Lake. This fall, started today, they actually are going to be working on sidewalks, curb ramp installations, and replacements at approximately 20 locations that exist between Hillcrest and the outpost. Working on drainage systems and other maintenance work at approximately 40 locations between Nash Street and Raybrook Road going west. And then in 2021, they'll be working on pavement repairs, doing a 2-inch deep mill and fill paving running from Hillcrest to just past the Welcome to Lake Placid sign as you're coming into the village on the west. They'll be putting a new overlay on the entire road running all the way back to the railroad crossing in Saranac Lake. And then the one thing I think that we want to pay attention to and work is that the 2021 milling and paving work to be done in the village will be completed at night. And this is something we've been following. They've been anxious because of traffic between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. Lane closures to be expected, alternating one-way traffic with flag persons. And this is most important. We will contact you again to advise when that work is about to get underway. The current expectation is that the project will take until the end of November 2021 to complete. I think the concern that I have expressed to the representatives at DOT is that night work is going to be of great interest to the businesses that are located between Price Chopper and Hillcrest Avenue, some of which are hotels, other businesses. So they've indicated that they will work with us to the extent they can. So the important part of this is the night work. I think that we're going to have to pay attention to next year.
You didn't mention, it doesn't really say, do you know if they're going to try to do something about the cement slabs from Old Military and Price Chopper for the like speed bumps? I know they talked about going in there and removing those.
That would be ideal.
But I just was curious if that was included in that work.
It isn't written into this letter in a manner that I can identify it.
Can we make it a
Because boy, that would be nice to have that done at the same time for blacktop.
The only way you can avoid it is to go to the center, totally middle of the road with oncoming traffic. Pretty brutal.
Anyway, that's what we know. And if there are concerns about anything that's going on currently, certainly if check with I mean, Brad has a pretty good sense of the work requirements for this project, and I think we can.
Who's the contractor?
I believe the contractor is Kubricki, who's done work here before. We've had good experience with him. As good as any project like this can offer. Okay, in the interest of getting an executive session in before we vacate this room, I'd like a motion to go into executive session.
Do we want to ask if
Elizabeth, do you have any questions up to this point?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm in the newsroom, so if you hear anything else, that's what that is.
Just watch colorful language.
I don't really have any other questions other than I was listening and I heard that you were considering some sort of possible meter increase at the parking lot across from the post office.
That has come up in a recent board work session, and I think we're looking at that. We will actually try to create a little broader understanding of what we're doing and draft a resolution, which I think we can bring to the next board meeting in 2 weeks. What do you think, Mindy?
Yeah.
So more to come on that, but we're not 100% of the way there yet.
Okay, and a couple of weeks ago, I remember you mentioning that there was going to be a group to review the police department policies. Have you named anybody to that group yet?
That is currently under consideration. The mayor and the chief have met this past week on 2 occasions to review. Since that meeting, Liz, the governor's office has sent out it's actually a 100-page document indicating why he wants this done, and then setting specific guidelines as to how it's to go forward. So we are looking at that. I believe in the next 2 weeks we'll have all of that on the table for the board. It's a project that's going to take us all the way into the winter for sure, probably into the first quarter.
Are you looking to add people? Because you had mentioned originally a sort of a pool of people, but is it more of a punch list that could be accomplished?
The directives of the state are specific as to the types of organizations that we need to reach out to.
Oh,
Had I jumped on this 2 weeks ago, I would have obviously, I think, I know Anita and I had talked about just putting a note out in the paper advertising for interested parties. But now we know that we've got to include, it's got to be an inclusive type of.
There's certain sectors.
Yeah. So we should have that. I think the chief and I have spent a fair amount of time on this already. It is going to move forward, and it's not an awful project. The guidelines of the state, it reads like we're in a big city.
Yeah, it's really hard to
We're
differentiate.
very small. Our community is small. The elements that they talk about that they want larger communities certainly to engage in review of are not what we have here. So I'm looking for a little bit of guidance on how we tailor that to a Lake Placid size community.
Other communities have publicly complained about that too.
Yes.
But I can understand the importance of having a sort of having diverse input. Kind of measuring that up with a very not diverse community. So
It is very important. I think the samplings of our department's activity compared to, say, New York City or Rochester, that's a good one to pick, might be very different. We just don't.
Craig, I would mention that we've got 10 minutes before we got to get out of here. We have an executive session.
Okay. So if I can have, Liz, does that help you for now?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I was going to mention is if you guys are going to take any action after the executive session, it'd be great if it was broadcast.
No.
I would say that there would be no further action. If there is, I will inform you.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, if I could have a motion now to go into executive session. Peter, Art, all in favor?
Hold on, stopping recording.